Hi, everybody, and welcome to our weekly show, hashtag Ask Edutyping, brought to you every Thursday at 4:15 p.m. Eastern Time on Facebook, and we bring that to you live every week. My name's Mike Esowich. I'm co-founder of Teaching.com, Edutyping.com, and Typing.com. This show basically is set up to field questions from our user audience from across the globe. So if you use Typing.com, Edutyping, or any instructional keyboarding product, we welcome your questions each week. You can reach us via Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram using hashtag AskEdutyping. And if we don't get to your questions this week, please remember that we will try our best to respond to each and every question that we receive. So we begin each week with a different typing tip. This week's tip will be about warming up. So what this basically means is before you introduce a formal keyboarding lesson, meaning you're about to use Edutyping or Typing.com or any keyboarding product that introduces students to kind of a structured lesson, it's great to have them warm up their hands and their eyes and all of their motor skills to get them prepared for the real thing. Just like our bodies need to be warmed up before we do exercise or any physical activity, the same concept applies for keyboarding. So basically what this means is, let's say you're introducing the F and the J key. Before you have your students start that formal lesson, you can do a warm-up exercise like a dictation drill. And basically all this encompasses is have your students either open up a word processing program or they don't even need to have anything open at all on screen. And you just begin by saying, okay, hands on your home row key, and you start to dictate what letters for the student to press on the keyboard. So you would say something like F, F, space, J, J, space. And you get into a rhythm that allows students to kind of warm up their brains, get their fingers warmed up, position themselves at their workstations properly, and then after about a minute or a minute and a half, they should be ready to go. So we're going to start with our first question of the week. I'm joined every week by my colleague, Robin, who will read our first question for Ask Edutyping. Robin?
First question is Lynn from Maine. I teach digital literacy to all freshmen. The first unit I cover is keyboarding. The problem is the students have been introduced to technology way before I have them in class, and they have developed the worst typing habits known to mankind. I use typing drills, games, candy, stickers, and other incentives. Some take charge of their technique and others refuse. Unfortunately, we do not have a keyboarding computer class in elementary or middle school. Any suggestions for a high school business teacher and her keyboarding students?
Well, Lynn, you're not alone, first of all. And Lynn is from Maine. And I just want to point out that I am a native New Englander and I love Maine lobster. Yes, that's lobster ending with an A, not an ER. We got to pronounce it the right way here in the New England area. So first of all, Lynn, the obvious answer here is that, first of all, you're not alone. There are many schools with the same challenges, meaning middle school teachers or high school teachers who are introducing keyboarding notice that their students have developed very poor habits over time. They haven't been given formal instruction at grades kindergarten through 6th grade and sometimes 7th or 8th grade. In your case, you're teaching high school. So your freshmen are coming in, basically, they have no concept of proper keyboarding technique because it's not their fault. We live in a world of many devices where basically there is no technique. You just swipe your finger and you can load an app. And they're used to using their thumbs to text. So there are many challenges in front of you as well as many other teachers out there with the same problem. So my first recommendation is form a committee and begin to lobby that keyboarding is introduced at the primary grades. As early as kindergarten is ideal, but if you can get started in 2nd or 3rd grade, that will obviously, bad habits are tough to break. So if you form good habits at a young age, obviously they're just like riding a bike, they'll stick hopefully for a lifetime. And how to do this is get on your school board's agenda for the next school board or school committee meeting. And maybe you can lobby your principal or an elementary principal or any technology person within your district and invite some business community members who can also help strengthen your case to implement keyboarding at a younger grade level. And you'd be surprised that your school committee will take note of it, but they're the ones who make usually the decisions for the district, especially as far as funding goes. So even if you're able to introduce it at a small level, it's better than what you have right now. In addition to that, definitely for your high school students who are coming in with the bad habits, my recommendation is, especially when introducing keyboarding early on, you may count posture and technique as a certain percentage. Maybe it's 10 or 15%. My recommendation is bump that percentage up so that students are seriously penalized when they're not demonstrating proper keyboarding techniques. So you might want to bump that up to 30 or 40%, maybe even 50% of their grade, especially in the beginning, so that they understand the importance of utilizing that. Secondly, it's important that students really hear, not just from you, but also from businesses at large, the importance of having typing skills in today's technology-driven world. So my recommendation would be reach out to your community members and anybody who is working in a business or owns a business, invite them into your classroom and have them have a conversation with your students so they can talk about the importance that they see typing skills in the workplace, because it's becoming a foundational skill that employers expect from their employees. And then I'll offer you this one final thing, Lynn. I would be happy to do a video meeting with your class or classes. I'm not sure how many sections of keyboarding you teach. However, if you email me at mg@edutyping.com after we get through with our show today and provide me with your contact information, I'll be happy to talk to your students and let them know that, you know, as a person who's an expert in the area of keyboarding, and I'm also an employer, that it's a critical skill. And maybe that will help you reinforce some of the concepts that you've been trying to drive home with them. So thank you, Lynn. That was a great question. So let's get going with our second question of the week. Robin, if you would.
Our second question comes from Linda. How do I get students to keep their hands on the home row?
Well, that's a basic question that I'm sure many teachers from around the globe are curious to find out the answer to. So the first typing kind of strategy that I would try to implement is that your students are very visual. The keyboard by nature is very visual. It's got a lot of keys on it, different letters and symbols. So by nature, your students need to see what they're touching. And in today's technology-driven world, they're so used to seeing different devices and touching and swiping and so on. So that they're familiar with. The problem is anchoring those hands on the home row key is very challenging for students, because with apps, there is no uniform way of touching. There may be a button in this corner, and then another app may have a button in that corner. So they're not really trained that way. So here's what I would recommend. Take a blank sheet of paper, have your students place both hands on that sheet of paper, have them trace their hands, they love to do that, and then write the corresponding home row keys above each corresponding finger. So it would be A, S, D, F, J, K, L, semicolon. Actually, I had that backwards, but you get the picture. And then what they can do is then lay the paper flat and have them, you can use a dictation drill, like I want you to touch the letter A, S, D, F, etc. So that they're kind of getting detached from the physical keyboard. So this is like an offline activity that's very helpful, and you can have them do that on a regular basis. Another strategy is if you go to blog.edutyping.com, that's our blog that we update every week with a variety of instructional strategies. One of the blog sections that you'll see is a downloadable blank keyboard. So students can print that out and then label the home row keys as well. And then again, you can do different exercises on paper. Another great strategy, and students love this, I call it the home row stars board. So you basically take a piece of poster board, mount it to a cork board if you can, or just your wall. And then what you can do is pass out construction paper to students, or you can do this yourself. But students kind of love working with different tools. So, that's your preference. And what you do is you basically cut out little frames of a home. And so standing obviously for the home row key. And those those construction paper homes get their students' names written on them. And you can use any kind of measuring stick on this piece of poster, label it home row stars. And then my suggestion would be something like a thermometer. So starting with different measurements where it's really cold. So you'd start at 0 degrees going up to something like 150 degrees. And then as you see improvement from students, move them up that thermometer so they can see their progress. So if you see students using good home row technique, you just move them up a little bit each week. And they love to see their name in lights. We all do. So that's a little incentive. Another thing is you could provide small incentives and rewards. Something like if you can find a little Tinker toy that represents an anchor that you could hand out to students. That could be used when you see them anchoring their fingers on the home row key. And then another thing that works real good is candy. We just passed Halloween actually last night, so they probably don't need any more sugar in their system. However, actually, it was 2 days ago. Something like $100,000 bar or a payday bar, kind of, it's like a reward to say, hey, you're getting rewarded for doing good technique. So hopefully those tips help you out. Good luck, and we're going to move to our final question of the week now. So Robin, if you would.
Last question comes from Kathy. How do you get students to break their bad typing habits? Example, students won't use the correct finger positions for the keys. With all the texting going on, students just want to have their hands and fingers all over the keyboard. I find it very challenging to get them to do the correct techniques and reaches. I do occasionally put on the speed skins so that they don't look down at the keyboard as much, and I try to get them to use the correct reaches with their fingers. Any suggestions?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, many of the strategies I just was talking about in our second question, where you can use incentives like the home row stars, or you could have a typing and posture stars board where you make construction paper stars and label those with the student's name and move them up as you see progress. Another suggestion, as I previously mentioned, is definitely put a higher percentage on keyboarding posture and technique when it comes to grading. It's something that it's not something that the program like typing.com or EduTyping can grade for you, but it's important to have that offline evaluation where you walk around the computer lab and consistently correct students in an appropriate positive reinforcement way when they're demonstrating poor technique and posture at the keyboard. You mentioned that you use keyboarding skins. I'm very familiar with keyboarding skins, and they do come in a variety of different shapes and sizes. Well, not shapes, but or sizes, but they come in a variety of different colors and contour. And what I mean by that is, if you're not familiar with what a keyboarding skin is, it's basically kind of an elasticy rubber cover that mounts itself on top of the keyboard. So it basically eliminates students from being able to see the keys, but it still allows for the student to be able to touch the keys as they normally would. Problem with the skins is that it takes away the natural feel of the keyboard. So when a student is pressing a key without a skin on top of it, it's a much different feel, and it's a little bit harder to press down. Even though it's very, very slight, it still kind of plays with the psyche as far as touch typing goes. So my recommendation would be not to use skins. Introduce students to a different type of way of covering the keys with a type of keyboarding cover that I mentioned earlier. We have a product called No Peek keyboard covers, and you can make these out of cardboard actually, so you don't have to purchase them. And basically, you rest it on top of the keyboard, and then students slide their fingers underneath, and they can still look for a visual reference to make sure that they've got their fingers on the right keys. But it also will force good typing habits, because otherwise they're just going to make a ton of mistakes. So, and you don't need to leave these on all the time. And you can actually, say, hey, listen, to a percentage of your class that's having difficulty, just use them with those folks. So incentives, don't use skins, use covers, and provide a higher percentage of grading percentage rather to their keyboarding posture and technique. So that's all we have time for this week at Ask EduTyping. But again, if we didn't field your questions today, please feel free to send them to, and we welcome them to hashtag Ask EduTyping through Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. It was a pleasure kind of talking to you again this week. I look forward to next week. And remember, to teach is to learn twice. Take care, everybody.